Welcome to the Milo Yiannopoulos Show on Podcast One, broadcasting live from Mordor, the Borg Cube, and Voldemort's lair all at the same time. This show is hosted by Milo Yiannopoulos, the most fabulous supervillain on the internet. Sorry, no offense, but it's true. The Milo Yiannopoulos Show is brought to you by Breitbart.com.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Milo Yiannopoulos Show, the only podcast that causes mass panic attacks on college campuses. Every week on Fridays, you'll be able to hear me and my co-host discuss the most pressing issues of the day, like my workout routine, my hair, Kanye West, Mariah Carey's new reality show. On the agenda today, the Hulk Hogan execution of a flawless leg drop against Gawker Media, winning a lawsuit that could cost the company $140 million. Twitter still hasn't given me my verified check mark back, and yes, I'm still pissed about it. The polls suggest Hillary's eclipsing Trump, but I don't think we need to worry too much about Daddy, and I'm going to tell you why. And there's more excuses, apologism, and general hideousness from the left in the wake of murderous Islamic violence in Brussels. Following all that, of course, we have our headline celebrity interview. I'm here with this week's co-host, Alan Bakari. This is the Milo Yiannopoulos Show. Hi, Alan.
Hello.
So Alan is here with me to talk through the news, what's been happening this week. Alan, what has been happening this week? I'm so out of it because I've been on tour and I've been sort of rushing around. We're finally settled in Los Angeles, catching up on the news. What's going on?
Well, if you're on social media late last week, you'll have noticed an outpouring of memes, remixed videos of Hulk Hogan executing various wrestling moves against other wrestlers with the logo of Gawker photoshopped onto their face.
I did see this, and this is because
the climax of the closely watched Hogan versus Gawker trial has occurred, and a court in Pinellas County ruled that Gawker must pay the wrestler $140 million.
And this is all because they published a sex tape of him having sex with his friend's wife. Yeah, I mean, this is great. This is like the most expensive sex tape in history. It's fantastic.
Indeed, it wasn't even a full sex tape. It was a snippet of a sex tape.
Did they show like Hulk penis? Was there Hulk penis? Did you see it?
You know, I haven't actually seen it.
Yeah. Of course you haven't. Nobody's seen it. The whole media is talking about this story and nobody's seen the video. I ask everybody the same question, is there Hulk penis? And nobody knows, which suggests to me that maybe there wasn't so much news value in publishing this after all, because people didn't want to see the tape. I don't want to see Hulk Hogan have sex.
Well, you also didn't want to see the Mattress Girl sex tape. You made one of your interns do it.
I did. I wrote a review.
I don't blame you for that.
No, I mean, I did eventually watch it, but Emma Solkowitz, the Mattress Girl, who probably lied about being raped at Columbia, made this terrible it was a sex tape, and it was taken from 4 different angles because she's that narcissistic. Well, you could see she was fat in 4 dimensions, you know. No, I mean, I wrote a review of it, eventually reluctantly did watch it, but I had researchers do it first. Okay, so what the journalists that I talk to about this stuff are telling me is that they sort of taking pleasure in this because it's Gawker and everybody hates Gawker and everybody knows that they are sadistic and sociopathic.
With
and
the
horrible.
exception of Polygon, there's been an outpouring of support from Polygon journalists.
Really? This is the video game place.
I suppose they have solidarity over their shared experience as the target of Gamergate last year.
I suppose so. It's amazing how people just suspend their principles for that kind of tribalist. It doesn't matter, what they believe, but they hate somebody or something so badly, or they're so butthurt about losing an argument, they will literally line up with anyone. Okay, so what the journalists are telling me is, they're enjoying the spectacle, but they do worry about a precedent being set for free speech on this one, right? Because we should be able to tell the truth. What Gawker published was the truth. It was a real sex tape. It had him in it. And if enough of their readers find that interesting, isn't that the definition of public interest? And should we stop people from publishing true things?
Well, isn't there a distinction between what's interesting to the public and the public interest?
Well, Gawker would say no, and I know that Nick Denton doesn't believe that there is. It seems fairly obvious that this one is going to be overturned on appeal. The question for Gawker really is if it can survive having to pay out money in the interim. If they want to appeal, I think that the ceiling in Florida is set at $50 million, and if the court insists that they have to pay that, they just don't have it. I suppose it's it's a justified, I guess, a kind of comeuppance many people will feel for Gawker. This is a site that, routinely bullies people. This is a site that does the most appalling things. And it used to be great. It used to be like Free Speech Central. Many of us watched Gawker with awe and admiration, and certainly I did. I used to give interviews when I was running my own media company saying I love Nick Denton. I think what he's created is amazing. But then, of course, they started outing gay people who weren't in public life. That Condé Nast executive, they just announced that he was a homosexual, or possibly colluding with a gay prostitute to extort him for money. I mean, these are not the actions of a responsible company, are they?
No, I mean, again, it comes down to, interesting to the public or in the public interest. How is the public interest served by that? How is the public interest served by, for example, publishing the names and addresses of gun owners in New York? Or releasing... Right,
and Coulter famously said, well, I want to know who's had abortions on my street. Can I get a register of that? If this is private information about people, why is it... Yeah, sure. No, I get that.
We mustn't forget their political biases either, because one of the things that happened in the trial was Nick Denton said he wouldn't consider a sex tape of the Obamas to be newsworthy. But this is the same company that published...
Who thinks that Hulk Hogan's is?
Exactly, but this is the same company that published private emails and pictures from Sarah Palin's hacked email address in 2008.
And I love, just gives you an indication of how out of step with ordinary people's concerns the sort of bloggers on the coasts are. When you've got AJ Delario, who we discover, unsurprisingly, has a negative net worth, because of course he does, because they're all angry, broke social justice warriors.
He had the biggest gaffe of the trial, didn't he?
Right, this is what I'm saying. They asked him, so how young would too young be for a sex tape? And what did he say, 4 years old? I mean, imagine a Pinellas County, Florida jury. These are just ordinary folks from Florida who love Hulk Hogan. He's the local celebrity, listening to these batshit crazy bloggers from somewhere in New York talking about sex tapes with kids of 4 years old. I mean, it's hardly surprising they awarded the kind of damages they did, really.
I'm not sure if they were trying to get to appeal, but it didn't seem like the lawyers were making much of an effort, because they made some really bizarre, stupid arguments. They compared Hulk Hogan, they implied Hulk Hogan was the equivalent of the Nazis. They used Nick Denton's grandparents' experience growing up in Nazi Germany to argue, well, this is what happens when free speech is suppressed. So, comparing a local hero to Hitler might not be the best approach.
So basically, they wanted to get through the trial as quickly as possible because they think they're going to win on appeal. So this plays into something that Donald Trump's been saying recently about the press. And this is a controversial point, I understand, and I'm not completely worked out where I stand on this, right? But the government is supposed to step in when you have widespread systemic industry-wide failures, right? You do it with banks, you would do it with oil, energy, you do it with anything that really matters, right? Now, the press is difficult because we have the First Amendment, in this country, recording from...
Which is a good thing.
Which is a great thing. But when Trump, for instance, I'm interested in your view on this because I'm conflicted on this one. When Trump instinctively understands that everybody hates the media. And they do. Normal people hate the press. They hate journalists. They hate politicians. They see them as all the same. And they're right to. I mean, at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, you've got press, sort of jockeying for favor with the people they're supposed to be holding to account. This wouldn't happen in Britain, It might happen in some, Soviet bloc countries where the journalists are paid by the government. But it's a remarkable thing that it happens in America. For me as a Brit watching this,
But in Britain, we have other problems. In Britain, the press is so deferential to public figures that they covered up the Jimmy Savile scandal for years and years and years.
Well, entertainment figures...
I think that would be less likely here in the
Maybe entertainment figures, but, I suppose the approach is different because Jimmy Savile did abuse kids, and of course that's awful, but the people running the country get more scrutiny than that. I mean, they're terrified of the press. MPs are so scared of the press.
I don't know. MPs put the press on trial over the phone hacking scandal. I think politicians have more power over the press in Britain than they do in the US, and that might not necessarily be a good thing. I think we don't want to set an incentive for journalists to, just go barge through celebrities' windows and take pictures of them in their underwear, which is what would happen if you said that, anything that's interesting to the public is in the public interest, which is what Gawker wants to argue. But at the same time, I think we have to be careful that this anger you talk about, this anger at the press, doesn't lead to over-regulation of the press.
Okay, I mean, I get that. It's at least good politics, though, isn't it, for Trump to say,
Absolutely.
People hate the press, and it would be nice if we made it a bit more difficult for them to lie about people. I mean, you and I know from our reporting on Gamergate and on gender issues, we know that the press lies to and about people all day, every day. It goes way beyond like negligence and into mendacity.
The way to fight lies is with the truth and not being intimidated by the press. You don't need regulation for this. And I think what Gamergate proved, what Donald Trump proved, is that you can fight the press and beat the press without resorting to legislation.
I suppose he's the best example of why his own statement about the press might be wrong, in that, he's successfully managed to beat it. But as private citizens, it's more difficult. If you think about the uprising of whether it's video game fans or men who are routinely lied about by gender activists, the front pages of conservative newspapers telling lies about the wage gap, lies about campus rape culture. I mean, how do you respond to that as a citizen? Shouldn't we try to make the press tell the truth more?
I think there was a small moment when the press had disproportionate power in the early days of social media with the rise of BuzzFeed and Gawker, and that was the age of public shaming, where Gawker would, take a tweet from ordinary members of the public like Justine Sacco, put it on the world stage and essentially destroy their lives and careers. That doesn't happen anymore because we've had this consumer backlash against the press with Gamergate, because the anger has become more pronounced and organized. So I think a natural balancing is taking place, and I think it's easier for ordinary citizens to fight the press these days because they'll find an audience on social media, cultural libertarians, Trump fans who will take their side, and they will outnumber.
They do outnumber the
mobs that used to go
crazies.
After people like Justin Sacco.
They do outnumber the progressive crazies. I want to move on to the troubles of a related institution, which is Twitter. Now, Twitter, as you know, took my checkmark away for making jokes about feminists.
I know, such a tragedy.
It is. No, well, I said this on Greg Gulford on Fox. It's like buying a business class ticket and then you walk onto the plane and they make you turn right, and the food is terrible. The thing is, it was clearly an ideological slap on the wrist, but they used a mechanism that was designed to verify the identity of public figures. And I don't know many people who aren't real big celebrities who are more imitated online than me. Now,
meanwhile, there are tiny journalists who have verified checkmarks who clearly don't need
Right, because they've got the right politics, or because their organizations have relationships with Twitter. I'm wondering what we should do about it. I've been to the White House. I've asked Josh Earnest. I went to the White House. I said, what does Obama think about free speech on social networks? Does he believe with the censoring of conservatives? And Josh Earnest said the president will be the first person to affirm that the success of these businesses rests on their commitment to First Amendment principles. That doesn't mean you force private companies to comply with the First Amendment, because of course you can't do that. But Twitter should do one of two things: either be honest that it doesn't like libertarians and it doesn't like conservatives and it doesn't like anyone outside of a narrow band of far left progressive activists, and if you're on the network, sooner or later you're going to get kicked off or suspended or whatever. Be honest with users about it, or return to real free speech where you don't allow professional activists to mischaracterize ridicule and criticism as abuse and harassment. Well, I think
cyber violence.
Cyber violence. These people need to get a grip. All right, let's move on to the next story, which is Hillary and Trump. Now that we have some troubling news. It's a sad moment for lovers of daddy everywhere. Daddy, for listeners who don't know, is of course my name for the God Emperor Donald Trump. I love him so much, but trouble is afoot for Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton is opening up a double-point lead. What does it mean? Can he still win?
Well, it's very early, so it's difficult to say. I mean, if you go back to 1979, 1980, Jimmy Carter had 20-point leads over Ronald Reagan at this stage in the race. Yeah. But that was a very different race. You had the Iran crisis, which popped up later.
But this is similarly unpredictable, isn't it? Because every time people have betted against Trump, they've brought out poll numbers, they've said he's ridiculous, they've done all this stuff. Every single time he's confounded expectations. So you're a bit more, and
there's a bit of a parallel. There's one parallel with Reagan versus Carter, in that the establishment hated Reagan in the same way the conservative establishment hates Donald Trump.
Well, everybody hates Trump, except for the people, except for the voters. At least a sizable proportion of them.
What voters? Women voters, Mexican voters.
He does very well with Mexicans. He does very well. I mean, he's a gay icon. I think Trump is like a natural candidate for all sorts of groups who just need to be coaxed out and just need to realize, what a horror show it would be having another Clinton White House. I mean, these people are crooks, right? Let's read Ann Coulter's book on this. They were selling. You could sleep in the Lincoln bedroom if you donated $100,000 to the Democrat Party.
Well, I'm certainly not going to defend Clinton, but I would rather have a Trump presidency than a Clinton presidency for various reasons. not least Clinton's refusal to say anything productive on the Title IX crisis on campus, her contempt for free speech, various.
Most of the stuff that we care about and our listeners care about,
indeed,
she's terrible on.
But from a purely electoral analysis, I think Trump's problem is that he generates hatred at the same rate as he generates the enthusiasm. So if you just look at the enthusiasm, it's very impressive and better than any other candidates.
Yes.
But
silently
the mirror
on the
image
side.
of that is the
but I think this is overplayed. There's a small on the left, of course, because the left are way more violent than the right. All the protests, all the violent protests, always come from the left. If you look at that kind of stuff, it looks bigger than it is. It's just a small number of well-funded Black Lives Matter protesters. It's the same old feminist crazies. A few college students. I'm convinced that...
Don't underestimate tribal psychology. When a Mexican person hears Trump talking about, Mexican murderers and rapists on the TV, they won't necessarily go out and commit violence at a rally, but they will lodge in their heads and they'll remember. It's
so hard because I'm walking around Hollywood and I'm asking people, and I'm asking there's a Mexican guy who was waiting on us the other day, huge Trump fan. Every black person I meet, huge Trump fan. I was in the hair salon the other day, and the woman who washed my hair. Of course, I was in the hair salon the other day. It's one of the occasions I was in the hair salon the other day. The woman who washed my hair said, "Oh, you should just leave the hat on instead."
We are in Los Angeles, so I imagine
But Trump's
badly paid retail workers who do menial tasks for rich, obnoxious, progressive actors might have a resentment against progressivism.
Or indeed rich, obnoxious, conservative talk show hosts. I have faith in Daddy. We're going to see how things roll. This is clearly going to be the most unpredictable election in American history because it's being fought culturally and not according to economics or foreign policy or anything that elections have traditionally hinged on before. Obama opened this up with the big rhetoric, the hopey, changey stuff, the stuff that he's famous for and then didn't deliver anything on. But Trump now has sort of come in and he's fighting this war culturally. And by the time you listen to this, most of the clips will be out from the Dave Rubin show that I did recently, and talking about how I believe that there is a huge culturally libertarian consensus waiting to erupt in American politics, which consists of disaffected liberals, classical liberals, cultural libertarians, small state conservatives who just don't want to be told what to do anymore. And for them, Trump is the icon. Trump is the person who is going to rescue them from the nannying and the pearl clutching that we always talk about so much.
I agree with that. My final comment on this, I agree with that. My worry about the election is that those people are all millennials, and while they will come to dominate politics,
they don't really.
Trump has the problem of old, cautious moderates and establishment types.
And
who vote in larger numbers than the youth.
They do, and some of them will be put off by the brashness of Daddy. All right, well, we'll see how it goes. I've still got his back. The last thing we should talk about is Brussels, which everybody wants to talk about, but Obama has said that the Islamic State perverted one of the world's great religions. It's obviously bullshit, right? This is nonsense. This is yet another example of progressive politicians. All the conservatives do this too. Lying about the link between Islam and terrorism. Lying about, what this stuff... Look, these people describe themselves as Muslims. They say they do this stuff in the name of Allah. They say they do this stuff for the glory of God. We should surely give them the benefit of the doubt and allow them the right to describe themselves as we want. If we're going to let transgender people call themselves she, if we're going to let this genderqueer nonsense, we don't let people describe themselves as the religion that they have. The thing that frustrates me about all of this as a gay person is that we seem to be making excuses for an ideology, and I don't mean Islamism, I mean Islam, and this is mainstream Muslim culture in 11 countries where it's illegal to be gay and be killed. We seem to be making excuses for a religion that seems to breed profoundly hostile cultures to women, to gays, to all the rest of it. And I don't understand, I don't expect you to come up with an answer for this because I haven't found one. I don't understand why progressives are doing this. They expect us to believe that out of all of the various minorities that they're constantly bullying us about and telling us that we're hateful toward, somehow Muslims are the number one victims. How is this possible? How did Muslims get to the top of the progressive stack? Because it seems to me that the only possible explanation is that progressives hate the West as much as Muslims do, and they have similar ideological objectives. And it's simply the case that every time that a criticism of the West is heard on the streets of Tehran or Raqqa, progressive journalists are sitting at home thinking, well, they're right, aren't they? And sticking up for these guys as a result. I don't get it. You have a dodgy name. What's it, Bukhari? You're from, was it Pakistan?
Yes. My dad did come from Pakistan.
Oh dear. fire you.
I'm wearing my suicide vest right now.
Yeah, good.
Don't piss me off.
Don't say too much. All right. Why are we elevating Muslims to the status of victims?
I don't think progressive...
Patronising them and putting them up to the status of victims like this?
Well, I think politicians are doing it for very cynical reasons. I think, especially in Europe, they want Muslim votes. Especially in the UK, where you have a first-past-the-post system, and Muslim areas can be quite important electorally. That's why your politicians referring to the Islamic State as Daesh, so
Daesh, or whatever
the Arabic acronym, so they don't have to use the word Islamic. It's just pathetic. I mean,
it's like that's what the country calls itself. Like, what do you want to do about it?
I know it's annoying because stronger statements against Islam, I think, would motivate moderates to be more vocal. And Islam does need does need a reformation. It needs to sort of be bullied into one, because it hasn't gone through.
Allow people to protect themselves. If you lie about this, you're denying people the ability to take care of themselves. These immigrants in Germany that are like making swimming pools go segregated, all this kind of stuff. I mean, from a gay person's point of view, I'm looking at these cultures swarming into Europe. And these people are from countries where gays are stoned, gays are like beaten up, killed, and in many cases, this is state sanctioned, was it 10, 11 countries? I mean, I always bang on about this in my talks. I think
technically I would be stoned too, because if your father was a Muslim, you're supposed to be a Muslim too, and I'm an atheist, so that makes me an apostate.
Oh, that's even worse than me.
Really?
Yeah. No, because they want
than being gay.
I don't know, buggery or aposty. Muslim listeners can let us know which one I guess you killed fastest, but they both get you killed.
I see.
All right, look, let's go to a break. It's been interesting. I'm terrified by mass Muslim immigration because this face is too pretty to be hurled into the floor from a 7th-story car park. But let's hope for the best. I might just stay in America. Maybe I won't go back to Europe. I mean, it's funny. People are talking about like the UK is going to be an Islamic country by 2060.
Would you rather stay in an Islam-dominated Europe or an America run by Hillary Clinton?
Oh God, no! I'll take Europe. I'll take Europe. At least they're hot.
Hi everyone, this is Adam Baldwin of Firefly, Full Metal Jacket, The Last Ship, Mass Effect, and hell, guys, it's easier to make a list of cool stuff I'm not in. You're listening to the Milo Yiannopoulos Show on Podcast One.
Welcome back to the Milo Yiannopoulos podcast, and in the second 2/3 of the show, we are going to bring you each week the most interesting, provocative, funny, charming, and thought-provoking celebrity that we can find. This week it's me. So my co-host Alan Bakari is going to take over the job of Milo Yiannopoulos and ask me some questions, but of course we're just going to have a discussion about 3 things. We're going to talk more about Daddy. We're going to talk about Facebook and its censorship of, its extraordinary levels of censorship of perfectly ordinary points of view. And then in the last segment of the show, we're going to talk about my university tour, the Dangerous Faggot Tour. So let's start off with Daddy. Alan, I'm so confused by everything that's happening in the media, in the conservative press when it comes to Donald Trump.
Well, you're just a confused person in general, I think.
Yep, thank you. As you may have deciphered, we do record segments of these shows at slightly different times of the week, and it is some disgusting time, like 6:17 a.m. or something appalling. I woke up to the vision of Alan Bakari looming over me with a gigantic microphone. So.
It's 9:10 a.m. Stop whining.
It's very early for me. I don't normally get up this. I can't be interesting before 12. All right, let's talk about Trump. Let's talk about the conservative media. Let's talk about why are they so scared of him? It's so amazing to me that you've got, it's Kevin Williamson at National Review, who I very much like. He's brilliant, and he writes so fantastically on so many subjects. And then, what did he say exactly? He said that white working class communities deserve to die out.
Working class communities who are the bedrock of Trump support said he acknowledged that they're scared of dying out, and that's why they vote for Trump out of fear. And then he said they deserve to die because they're voting for Trump. Which is an extraordinary thing to say.
Because of something that's wrong with them, or they're sort of the moral turpitude or something. It's extraordinary. They start to sound like left-wingers. And of course there was Rick Wilson, the GOP strategist, who made that comment about childless single men who jack off to anime.
Well, he's got the 4chan segment of Trump supporters down there. I mean, I have to hand it to him.
I mean, fine. Like, he's not. I mean, it's not
completely counterfactual, but it at least for a small slice of Trump.
The only establishment Republican I find who really understands 4chan and web culture.
That's funny. You know, I've noticed these two different bits of Generation Trump. There's the white working class supporters of Trump who look a lot like the liberal media tell you that all Trump supporters look like. And those people do exist, and there are lots of them. But there's a second sort of chunk of Trump supporters, and I think it's people like me. It's, you know, educated, slightly more metropolitan, trolly, you know, internet savvy, 20 and 30 somethings. And it's those people that bring much of the lightness of touch and mischief to the Trump phenomenon. And it's those people that, I mean, they're all my friends. I mean, I love them. They're great. But that generation, and then the younger sort of just hell-raising 17-year-olds on poll don't really, what they're characterized by is a sort of wild abandon when it comes to provocation and mischief.
Yes.
You know, these people aren't old enough, or they simply don't care enough about, you know, 9/11 or any bad things that have ever really
But they
happened.
weren't alive for World War II and the Holocaust. They weren't alive for Jim Crow and segregation.
But neither was anybody in their living family, right? They have no living relatives that were around for this stuff.
So the social norms set up by the baby boomers who do remember those things don't really make sense to them. And it's fun for them to take the piss out.
Exactly. And this is why I think there's this huge disconnect between, you know, the conservative press and this and Generation Trump, because as you say, you put it very nicely, they just don't observe the same social norms. And that is the root of the number one charge, I think, leveled, the most damaging charge leveled at Trump supporters, which is anti-Semitism. Because you quite often get, whether it's the alt-right or, you know, Rick Wilson's anime nerds or whatever, you quite often get this sort of anime nerd, you sort of quite often get this weird, it's like an avalanche of
memes,
Jew-related jokes and puns and pictures.
There's one sort of caricature they use on the internet that's come to known as Shlomo Scheckelberg. According to Know Your Meme.
Oh God! You see, I'm on the cusp of all of this, so I still have this kind of like, I still have a slight lurch in my stomach when I see it, but by the same token, I get what's going on here, and what I think is happening is Jonah Goldberg of National Review, when he gets very upset by people being anti-Semitic on the internet. Well, if you know anything at all about the internet, what is going to be the sole response to you expressing that something gets to you?
People are going to do it more.
People are going to do it more. And they don't do it because they're anti-Semitic. They don't care about Jews in many cases. Fine, some of them do. A small slice do. But in most...
But that's interesting, because how do we separate the two? Because what you don't want to do is have a situation where you allow genuine radical anti-Semites to attain public respectability thanks to the efforts of, you know, the less serious people.
Yeah, but how is that ever going to be the case? It's like the KKK, right? Trump gets in trouble for not sufficiently disavowing or inconsistently disavowing the KKK. Quite frankly, who cares? Like, there are no white supremacists in this country. There are no supporters of the KKK in public life. They have no purchase on the media, no purchase on politics. Anytime anyone expresses views even remotely close to anything like that, they are shamed and ostracized out of public life. Now,
well, that's my point. When they're shamed and ostracized out of public life currently, but if they were not shamed and ostracized, would they grow into a significant force again? I think that's the legitimate worry of some people.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at this stuff on the internet, and, you know, most of what they say about Jews is right. I mean, we do run all the banks. We do run media. We do have a vastly disproportionate, I'm just saying, we do have a vastly disproportionate influence in a number of important spheres in public life and in industry. Where you go with that is the issue, right?
Well, indeed. I mean, if you compare it to the left, the identity politics left, they talk about privilege. And I suppose the alt-right's version of that is, they talk about white privilege and male privilege. I suppose the alt-right's version of that is Jewish privilege. And as we saw with the left...
Well, the alt-right's version of it's actually real.
Well, as we saw with the left, when you start talking about privilege, it very quickly turns into tribal identitarian hatred. And isn't that a problem?
Well, sure, but here's the thing. Most of the kids, and they are kids, terrorizing, and I use that word, you know, satirically, it's not really terrorizing, but terrorizing sort of, you know, the very identifiably Jewish editors at conservative publications. I mean, a lot of these kids are 17 years old. You know, because I'll DM them and I'll be like, dude, what's up? Like,
which makes them impressionable as well. I mean, we can say it's youthful exuberance, but, you know, they're also impressionable. Isn't that a problem? If we acknowledge that there are some genuine extremists among the ranks of the alternative right.
So you're more worried about this than I am, because I think it's all just trolling.
Well,
I mean, I don't care about the word faggot on the internet. Like, I'm perfectly fine with it as a gay man. Like, I like it. I think it's fun. I think it's perfectly fun. See, because what you're suggesting,
I'm a fan of trolling. I'm just putting the other.
But do you think that people saying gay and faggot like promotes homophobia, or is going to right? So what's the difference between that and anti-Semitic? Well, what's the difference between that and like Jewish jokes and Jewish memes on Twitter?
Because it comes alongside with it comes this argument about that's very similar to the left's argument about white privilege.
Okay, so you think it comes with a different sort of set of ideology attached?
It can do, and I think you have to differentiate between the two.
All right. Maybe I just don't get as upset by words as other people. I don't know. There's something wrong in my brain where I just don't get offended. Anyway, we should move on to Trump's. I mean, we spoke a little bit in the first segment about Hillary sort of pulling ahead of Trump. That's a very distressing situation, which I'm sure will reverse itself shortly. But what interests me more is the conservative establishment's reaction to Trump. Just how scared they are by him. Absolutely terrified of this guy. Why do you think that he strikes such terror into the hearts, even of people? I mean, these guys are now rallying around Cruz just to stop Donald Trump getting
I was going to say, Jeb Bush endorsing Cruz. I mean, when would that ever happen?
I mean, that's amazing. Because there was a time, wasn't there? There was a moment when they were, I mean, I was reading in the papers that there was a moment when the Republican donors were thinking of getting behind Trump because they thought he was malleable. And Cruz was still persona non grata. So Cruz was still completely untouchable. Because Cruz, you know, he's created an entire career out of sticking it to the Republican establishment. I mean, they really hate him. They hate him. But it's almost like anyone but Trump, even for the right wing, and yet he's still succeeding and he's still winning.
Yeah.
I mean, this just tells you how out of touch people are. But I don't understand what's gone wrong with conservatism in this country. Why are they behaving like this? I mean, do they want to lose? Would they rather lose with Trump? Or what? I mean, what do they want to sort of lose with nobility and purity rather than win with Trump? Is that what's going on?
Well, I rather think that Cruz has more chance of winning than Trump, but I think
Cruz has more chance of winning than Trump.
Well, according to the polls at the moment, yes.
Oh God, there's something slippery and slimy about him. Like he just slid out.
You have something in common. You have the same favourite My Little Pony character.
This is your big Cruz expose that you made people wait for weeks to reveal that Ted Cruz is a favourite My Little Pony, and it is Applejack. Yes, but no, there's something about I just look at Ted Cruz and I think he's just sort of like climbed out of a river or something, you know? There's just no way that man's ever going to be president.
You decide who to vote for based on people's face.
I do.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't. Because because then I'd be a Rubio person, and of course he's just no. I don't get it. I mean, I'm fully paid up member of the cult of daddy for cultural free speech and libertarian reasons, so I'm just never going to understand the Republicans on this.
I think it's two things. I think, firstly, it's an invalidation of the strategy which they agreed upon after 2012, which was to ape the Democrats on identity politics, to tone down their rhetoric, to avoid the slightest hint of being called sexist or racist. Because if you remember, the Democrats won in 2012 by using the war on women narrative, which Romney fell victim to. The second reason is that Trump isn't the same kind of, free markets above all else Republican that many of the establishment feel very strongly about. I mean, that's what they were used to.
Well, they like that, don't they? And speaking to some of the alt-righters and Trump supporters, there's a sense that for them, culture is more important than economics, even in some cases.
This is legitimate heresy for the conservative establishment, because free market is their religion.
Right. And there's a sense that they want to protect and preserve Western civilization and Western culture. And Trump clearly loves those things. He clearly loves America. He's clearly proud of the country that at least America was, if not it is today. And many of his voters, I get the impression, simply care more about cultural issues. They care more about the fact that Trump is sticking two fingers up at political correctness, that he is horrifying the left, that he's even horrifying the, as they would say, the cucks on the right. They sort of love him as a cultural suggestion rather than being particularly interested even in foreign policy or whatever. I mean, they want him to board the wall. They want to fix trade. At least a section of his fans do, because they have concerns about their wages. But by and large, I like to say this is the first election that's being fought culturally and not according to foreign policy or economics. And if that's true, and if I'm right,
I think that's generally accurate. Yes.
Right, then Trump is the perfect candidate, because he's the candidate that resists 30 years of political correctness in all its various incarnations and all the various times that it has reared its head. It did it in the 90s. It's done it in the last couple of years. He's the perfect candidate for people who don't want to be told what to see, what to read, what to think, what to do, who to be. I mean, as a Trump supporter, you have that sense of mischief and irreverence, and you can do or say anything, and it's actually sort of encouraged for you to push the boundaries and break taboos and be naughty. And I think people hugely enjoy what Trump has done to the national conversation after a period of such mind-numbing boredom with people on both sides of the political spectrum, horrified and pretending to be horrified, pearl clutching at the slightest infraction of speech codes the left has enforced upon all of us. Trump has just smashed all that up. He's made it okay to talk about immigration. He's made it okay to talk about all sorts of things, but also to talk about them in very lively ways, which I think you and I do agree that, about the value and importance of offensive free speech.
Oh, of course.
In a democracy. And we haven't had that in America for a while. And in a sense, Trump is the best thing that could possibly happen to America, because he's restoring some of the fun and some of the vitality of the national debate.
A culture of liberty.
I think so too. Yes. Well, let's move on, because I could talk about Daddy all day. I want to talk about Facebook. Now, I can't use the name of my own tour on Facebook. My tour is called the Dangerous Faggot Tour, and we'll talk about that in the third segment.
You also can't mention pork faggots, which is a type of British delicacy.
Is it really a delicacy?
Well, British dish, shall we say.
I don't think there are any British delicacies, are there? Do we have anything that could be even remotely considered fine dining? I'm sorry to every British...
What about deep-fried Mars bars?
That's Scottish.
It is Scottish.
That's Scottish, yes. And it is good.
Yeah.
I can't eat food like that anymore because I'm on a diet. But yeah, deep fried Mars bars. You won't know. You probably won't. If most listeners are going to be American, they will never have heard of this.
Strangely, I think they sell them in Canada.
Do they?
Yes.
Do they? Yeah. So there's this thing.
I think there's sort of like a Scottish crossover or something.
Is there?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing to do in either country, so they start just getting fat and.
No, I think like there were Scots who emigrated to Canada at some point.
Oh, okay, all right, fine.
But your other thing is probably true.
There's fuck all to do in Scotland and nothing in Canada. No, I mean, it's a wonderful thing. Actually, what they do is they take candy. They take like chocolate bars. And one of them is the particularly sickly, sweet, rich one called a Mars bar, which I don't know if you have in America. And they just dip it in that coating they put on fish and
batter.
Fish and chips. Batter. Yes. Thank you. So you wake me up too early. Yeah. They put it in batter, and it's an amazing thing. I have had one. I've had sausages in batter, which are the best, which are lovely. You can't get good fish and chips in America. So if you go to England, you will never have a good meal. You will never have like a really proper dinner out unless you go to one of about 4 restaurants in London. But you can have really good fish and chips. There's a place called the Rock and Soul Place in Covent Garden in London, and they cook everything in peanut oil, and it's delicious. Anyway, Facebook. I can't use the name of my own tour. We can't, as you correctly say, mention the name of this delicious British dish. It's because they're doing it algorithmically, isn't it? They just Facebook's too big. They don't care. It's not like Twitter where they have these sort of like, I imagine this kind of raft of blue-haired social justice warriors sitting in an office in San Francisco, just blocking conservative bloggers for saying faggot and dyke.
Yeah, like Twitter's Ministry of Truth.
I love that. We should do a spoof on that. That's a great video.
Actually, the most absurd example I found on Facebook, there was a chap in Australia who posted a picture of Spanish Nazareno monks.
Yeah.
Now, anyone familiar with the Nazareno monks know that they
they look like the KKK.
Yeah, they wear those hooded cowls. So Facebook banned him because they thought he was posting KKK pictures.
But is this I'm surely this is not an algorithm. This is just some dumb as fuck employee who doesn't know the difference, right?
Sometimes it gets reviewed, yes.
Right.
Mostly it's an algorithm, but sometimes it gets reviewed. I'm not sure if they've done it for pictures yet.
No, I mean, I can't. I mean, but Google has that technology, so maybe they
possibly
do it. Who knows? But so I can't use the name of my own tour, which is so absurd, and I don't want to get banned from Facebook for 30 days. There's Chuck Johnson, the journalist who got banned from Twitter for a metaphor, and now he's been banned for 30 days from Facebook for...
What did he do?
Well, he says that he merely paraphrased Trump's foreign policy. I haven't seen the wording, so I don't know for sure, but I know
paraphrased is always a
tricky
one.
Who knows? But I mean, certainly, I will say this: his banning from Twitter was ridiculous.
Oh, that was absurd.
He was banned over a metaphor.
He said he wanted to take out DeRay Mackinson.
Clearly meaning damage his reputation with a piece of journalism.
Which is what he does.
Which is what he does for a living. Of course, anybody would understand this, but of course they just wanted him gone.
I mean, you even had like left-wing journalists at Slate standing up for Chuck Johnson. Which was
I mean, that was dumb. I haven't seen what he wrote on Facebook, so I don't know. But I do know that people on this side of the political divide, when they are robust and edgy and break stories and don't mind what they say, and certainly Chuck Johnson falls into that bucket, do end up falling afoul of this stuff.
Well, Chuck Johnson particularly, because his entire business model was based around crowdfunding and using his followers on social media, especially Twitter, to fund his journalism.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's what scares me most, however, is the way in which these companies are teaming up with governments. And the way that Facebook is teaming up with Angela Merkel in Germany to censor perfectly reasonable discussion. And we talked about this before in other shows. Perfectly reasonable discussion of immigration. And perfectly reasonable discussion, perfectly reasonable anxieties and concerns people have. And the thing about Facebook against Twitter is Twitter is only really used by the media elites, right? It's only really used by people like us. But ordinary people use Facebook to communicate with one another, to express their hopes and concerns and anxieties, their dreams. And this kind of stuff is being shaped by a social network in a way that most people probably won't even know about. And certainly they'll probably get confused. Imagine, just sort of say, well, I'm worried about such and such. And Facebook tags you for hate speech. Imagine what that does to a person who is not, fully apprised of the machinations and dishonesties of the, progressive left in technology. You think, my God, am I being, no, I'm not, oh God, I don't know what to do.
The other thing they can do.
It's a horrible thing to do to somebody, to lie and to brand ordinary speech as hate speech. Like the left, we always like to say that the left mischaracterizes ridicule and criticism as abuse and harassment. It's a really fucking horrible thing to do to somebody.
Well, the famous conservative slogan is "Truth is the new hate speech."
Yes, and of course on the internet we talk about hate facts, things that are incontrovertibly true, but the left just doesn't want to hear.
The other thing these companies can do is control what information you see. It used to be the case that, you followed people on social media and you saw stuff from them in real time as they posted it.
Yeah.
Now
Facebook, Twitter's supposed to work.
Yeah, now Facebook and Twitter control what you see based on algorithms that are meant to push information to you that you're interested in. But if Facebook suddenly decides, well, I don't want to push immigration news to people who are interested in it because they might be hateful or might make them more hateful, then they're actually stopping people from accessing information or making it harder for them.
It is scary stuff. We'll be back after these messages.
Hey, what's up? I'm Sunny Johnson from Breitbart.com, and I've got a confession to make. I often leave people dumbfounded and muttering to themselves, did she really just say that? No, I didn't stutter. See, I say what I want, and I say it with swag. I'll be mixing conservative intellect with hip-hop culture to bring you the most unique conservative show you've ever heard. So join me, Sunny Johnson, every Wednesday for Did She Say That on the Breitbart Podcast Network at podcastone.com and iTunes.
Even though blue-haired social justice warriors hurl themselves off the Golden Gate Bridge when they hear us say it, this is the Milo Yiannopoulos Show.
Welcome back to the Milo Yiannopoulos Show. I've had my coffee. I am more awake now. Alan Bakari is still with me, and we're going to talk about the Dangerous Faggot Tour, which is my college tour, and some associated issues. Now,
am I allowed to say faggot, by the way, because I'm a straight person?
No, you are. You are. I insist, actually, that you use the word faggot.
Okay. Right. I'm just going to use the word faggot.
Yeah, just call me do it like how Southern Americans do, like faggot.
Faggot.
No, not quite like no. That's no. I'll never do that again. Okay. Anyway, the Dangerous Faggot Tour, which I cannot mention on Facebook without risk of being banned, is my tour of American colleges talking about free speech, the evils of modern feminism, campus rape culture, which is of course a myth, the wage gap, which is of course a myth, safe spaces, trigger warnings, and all manner of other social justice lunacy. Now, some wonderful things have been happening on campuses this week. We've been enjoying very much some of the craziness. Emory University. Do you know what's happened at Emory University, Alan?
I'm not familiar. What happened?
Okay, well, at Emory University, students have been triggered by Trump 2016 appearing in chalk around the campus.
I see.
And the university administrators have said if anybody feels, traumatized or triggered by the appearance of these chalk words, that they're welcome to come to the university for counselling services. Now, I'm guessing that these are counselling services paid for by, with money that could otherwise be going to teaching people maths or teaching people physics.
This is what your enormous six-figure student loans are being spent on.
If there are any parents listening to this, $60,000 a year is going to these special snowflakes because they're traumatized by chalk words.
Well, they're traumatized by everything. They've been traumatized by your visits. They've been traumatized by Christina Hoff Summers. They retreat into these therapy sessions after anything that mildly offends them.
I will never get over Rutgers. I'll never get over it. It's the best thing in the world. I go there, I give a talk, and I'm saying something like, everyone I think knows this now, but I'm giving a talk about the importance of free speech and academic inquiry, and it'd be a good idea if we all had, open, free discussion of ideas. And what happens? Some feminist leaps up and starts smearing herself with blood. Now, the pictures are amazing. I've just dropped my coffee. Fantastic, wonderful background noise for the show for you. This is real. This is what happens when you're on tour and you have to record radio in hotel rooms. You're welcome, listeners. What happened was the feminists, they smeared themselves with blood. And then, of course, afterwards, for people who weren't even at the talk, the university staged therapy sessions, group therapy sessions. People who were so traumatized by the appearance on campus of a gay man with the wrong opinions that they needed to get it out of the systems. At Pittsburgh, there were students crying, like sobbing and wailing after my talk there, where I had the temerity to call Black Lives Matter idiots. And they are idiots. Now, this is just an amazing, amazing series of events. Now, I'm going to tell you about something I've got planned for later in the year.
But before we get to that, how on earth did this generation become so overly sensitive? Breaking down in tears, not even by listening to your speech, but by hearing you were in the vicinity.
Well, I used to be very mean on the students, and I know that some people, are quite vicious to them, call them special snowflakes and losers and all the rest of it. But I have to tell you, I've come around to the view that actually the students are not the problem, because these kids don't arrive at college like this. They don't arrive at college. In fact, I've got a great idea for a TV show along these lines. It's called My Social Justice Kid or My Social Justice Child, or so. And it's basically this show. It follows families that send their kids to college, and the kids go off normal, nice, pretty, happy, well-adjusted kids, and then after about 6 months of college, they come back with blue hair and piercings, and telling their mother that she's problematic, and then they think their dad's a racist, and there are microaggressions at the dinner table. It's going to be a great TV show. The idea I've got in my head is you're just sort of sitting there with the parents, going through photo albums of these beautiful, well-adjusted children turn themselves into these hideous, quivering blue horror shows of self-loathing and hatred after 6 months at a liberal arts college. So anyway, it's going to be called My Social Justice Kid. It's great. But look, it's the faculty. It's the administrations. There's a structural problem in American education and a problem of deep political bias and homogeneity in American university campuses. And what the students that are inviting me to speak are saying is if our universities refuse to give us a well-rounded education, we will do it ourselves. And we will invite not just nice, safe right-wingers like Dinesh D'Souza and, editors of magazines or whatever. We'll invite Milo Yiannopoulos. We'll invite Christina Hoff Summers. We'll invite hellraisers, because the colleges need to know that if they don't provide a sensible, well-rounded education, we will do it, and we will invite people they won't like very much.
How many of these rebellious, renegade college students are there, really? Do they outnumber the snowflakes on campus?
Now, see, I think we're going to have a different view on this, because it's my firm belief, or at least my hope, that sensible people are the majority, and I've always tried to have the best view of human nature possible. But what I think the dynamic I think that the psychological phenomenon that's really going on, which we've discussed before, I think what's actually happening is that most people go along with the social justice stuff just for peer pressure, really. When you have a media that is completely all in on feminism and social justice, when all of the media is telling you, you know, wage gap and sexism and microaggressions, all this kind of stuff, you just sort of do it to fit in. And there's a phenomenon that one of our friends told us about recently, which I found very, very fascinating, called a preference cascade. It's what's happened with Trump, in fact. When people
conceal their preferences, and there's a moment when there's a cascade when all these preferences come out. Where
right, so basically you've got a load of people who are effectively falsifying their beliefs and preferences to fit in for professional advantage, and you can't blame them. Like, most people are self-interested and opportunistic, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, like, it's scary and dangerous to say what you think these days.
This is what happened with the Soviet Union.
Right,
everyone hated
everything fell really, really fast because nobody agreed with it, but everybody went along with it. But as soon as
realized there was a moment which was safe to criticize,
as soon as you get the sense that there are other people like you, and even, especially if you get the sense that the other people like you are in the majority, which I believe they are. I don't think most people are born crazy social justice warriors. There is obviously always going to be a small, loopy, lesbianic contingent of man-haters who will be crazy feminists. There are always going to be a small, loopy contingent of black supremacists who just want to, like, you know, stoke up race hatred. But I don't believe that most women, you know, buy into the crazy feminist nonsense. I don't believe that most black people believe that Black Lives Matter, with its, you know, self-destructive tendencies and its race baiting and its hateful rhetoric, is the best way to solve, you know, problems in black communities in America. I think people go along with it, and when they realize that there's a sufficient other number of people that it's safe to be honest about what you believe, there is what our friend called a preference cascade. And this has happened with Trump, happens, as you say, with the Soviet Union. I think it's about to happen with social justice. I think it's about to happen on university campuses, because my tour is not the only thing happening, but it is definitely one of the catalysts for a new generation of mischievous, fun, trolly college students.
Are they in the majority, though? Because some would argue, Jonathan Haidt, the social psychologist, would argue that the psychological problem with the millennial generation goes deeper, because they've been raised in a culture not just on campuses but in wider society that emphasizes the protection of people's feelings, that says it's society's job to protect your feelings, protect you from being hurt and offended.
That's obviously a structural problem. I mean, that's obviously a generational problem. I like to say sometimes that millennials are probably the first entirely middle-class generation, because they've never really suffered. So rather than having real problems to worry about, they instead worry about their feelings. So yeah, sure. But isn't it the purpose of a university to remind young people that their feelings are ultimately unimportant, and to expose them to new ways of thinking and new ideas and new people? I mean,
the strengthening campus rather than the coddling campus.
Exactly. Shouldn't we be churning out graduates who are better equipped to deal with the real world, not less well equipped? Because it seems to me, I mean, I can't think of an American university, except if it's somewhere like Hillsdale or whatever. I can't think of many American universities that are churning out graduates better equipped to deal with the world than the kids who arrived as freshmen.
I wonder how they'll survive in the jobs market, because, you know, even the lowliest of jobs, and especially if you're the lowliest jobs, you know, burger flipping, there'll be some stressful situations you'll have to deal with. You'll have to deal with customers. Okay.
Flipper.
I'm not saying that.
No, I mean, there must be some
I'm not saying they'll all end up at McDonald's.
There must be. Well, social justice warriors don't have much else to go to. Do you know what I found very interesting? Just a little data point. You know, AJ Delario, the Gawker, we spoke about this in the show, the Gawker editor. Like, he was a senior editor at Gawker. You know, what is he? He's in his 30s, maybe, whatever. He's part of this Hogan trial, and it turns out that he's got negative net worth, and you're like, maybe social justice isn't the path to riches after all. Maybe you actually have to do something, or create something, or build something, or study and learn and contribute something, rather than whinging on the sidelines and complaining about what everybody else is doing. Maybe it would be a good idea to educate yourself in a real subject and get out there and do a job. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what kind of personality it takes? What kind of life it is to pretend to be offended on the internet for a living? Can you imagine these people who invent harassment, who deliberately go and stoke up threats so they can whine about them for money and attention? What kind of life that is? I don't want that for children. I don't want that for women. I don't want that for blacks. I don't want that for anybody. It's horrible.
But what else could they do? Because if they're so offended by minor disagreement, they can't deal with customers in a business environment who are sometimes rude and sometimes obnoxious. How on
earth? They're going to join the army.
Yeah.
I mean, these kids, like, what's going to to happen if we get what's going to happen if we get into a war?
China will win.
I don't know if it'll be the first country. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, basically, yes. But of course, that's what the left wants because they hate the West. Anyway, on the tour, I'm going to be getting a bit more specific in some of my talks. I'm going to be talking a bit more about cultural appropriation, why it's horse shit. I mean, this is another invention of of social justice warriors to make everybody feel racist, so they can control what you say and what you read and how you speak.
They say that you can't use the fashion or the music or the cultural styles of other cultures without being racist.
Right.
There was this wonderful
you don't
moment.
get to use, the products of oppressed cultures because you didn't go through the struggles they had to. I mean, please.
There was this wonderful moment in Boston at a museum where they were having a day where you could wear Japanese kimonos. And social justice warriors turned up to protest with their signs doing a sit-in. But then the local Japanese population turned out with their own signs saying, no, please
enjoy our culture. This is what's amazing.
You had white people against actual Japanese people.
It's so amazing. You've got these idiot middle-class white wankers coming up with this horse shit, and Japanese people are like, it's fine. I'm so grateful you're taking an interest. It's lovely. Look, cultural appropriation. We have to wrap up soon, but cultural appropriation isn't a thing. And you hear this on college campuses. They have a problem with mariachi costumes, or they have a problem with Indian headdress, red Indian. I'm not allowed to say that even. I've got to see. What are you going to say now? Native American red Indian. Please, for God's sake. Native American headdresses. There's somehow a problem with it. It's how art works. Let me give you some famous cultural appropriators from history. Mozart, Picasso, Wagner, Jay-Z. This is how art works. These people are dumb. The problem with them is they're just stupid. They don't know anything. They've never read any history. They know nothing about art, nothing about intellectual history, nothing about philosophy, politics, nothing. All they want to do is, all they've been taught to do is virtue signal to other people about their own, upstanding moral conditions. And they've never been properly educated.
About burger flipping, but they do have a very clear career path into the burgeoning industry of diversity consultants.
Well, I've got a theory about this, and some people will know this from the column that I wrote about this. I don't know whether, maybe you'll agree with me on this. I think that equality and diversity departments should be staffed exclusively by rich, straight white men. Because if you're going to start adjudicating between victim groups, you need to be free from the oppression and discrimination that these groups say they face, so that you can judge objectively, right? So the best thing...
And they always talk about ingrained unconscious bias.
Exactly.
So it makes perfect sense.
I can't do it because I'm a fag. So what I want is rich, straight white men to adjudicate on these issues because they are free from the issues they're being discussed. I mean, why on earth would we let women decide on women's issues?
It's a conflict of interest.
It's a conflict of interest. That's insane. Why would we let Black Lives Matter activists lay down the law about race relations? That's nuts. What we need is disinterested people who, by virtue of their extraordinary levels of privilege, don't need to engage in identity politics and, race baiting, all the rest of it. We want educated, well-bred, smart elites who are not subject to any of the oppression. They can judge, because ultimately this, resources are a zero-sum game. If you give more money to women, you take less money away from men. If you give more money to, like in colleges, if you give more money, if you spend money creating black-only dorms, that money comes from somewhere. So the best thing to do is to get people who have no oppression points, people who are drenched with privilege, to adjudicate. So do you agree with me on this?
So in conclusion, what you're saying is that straight white men should dominate another industry.
Yes. For another set of perfectly good reasons.
Indeed.
I think that's probably where we should leave it for this week. You've been listening to the Milo Yiannopoulos show. Our first guest was Milo Yiannopoulos. Next week, we have Ann Coulter, the conservative firebrand. We're going to be talking about Daddy. We're going to be talking about what a Hillary Clinton White House would look like. I'm sure she'll have some interesting things to say on that subject. Thank you very much for listening.
You've been listening to the Milo Yiannopoulos Show, the podcast that launched 1,000 therapy sessions for triggered snowflakes. Thanks for tuning in, and please do subscribe on iTunes, leave us a comment, a rating, whatever you like. Our producer is Alan Bakari. Our researchers are Will Ross and Michael Poole. Our resident German, Mark Geppert, ensures the trains run on time, and our sound engineer, John Fitch, can be found at sturbridgesound.com.
Download new episodes of The Milo Yiannopoulos Show at podcast1.com, and you can also listen to us at Breitbart.
Stay tuned for 60-second AP News headlines.